the level of war crimes taking place in Gaza each and every minute. I can't keep up with it. I'm trying to document it. And like you've been doing, the world needs to see what's happening. These little girls, little boys that are being slaughtered left and right. They're trying to hide it, but the world needs to see what's really happening. And I think a lot of people are beginning to wake up. And that's kind of my next question is, when it comes to the American population, when it comes to the global population, even like Israelis, I think it's 80% of Jewish Israelis now blame Netanyahu for this invasion of Israel. The majority of Americans don't support sending military, like unlimited military aid and weapons and all this stuff to Israel. It really seems like we're seeing a tidal shift in the sentiment of an otherwise usually really, pro-Israeli crowd in Western countries that are beginning to now take a more affirmative position, like we're seeing with Vladimir Putin, who are saying we need peace, we need a Palestinian state, and we need to respect what we've agreed on at the United Nations Security Council. So what is your take on that? And why do you think this happened? Do you think that Netanyahu felt he was in a risky position, so he may have let this happen? Or do you think it was really a sleuthy operation by Hamas and probably the Iranians that caught the Israelis off their guard?
There's that old saying, and I could be getting this wrong, but pride goeth before the fall. Israel is a nation that's overwhelmed with arrogance, hubris, pride. It's literally the definition of a narcissist nation. I mean, again, I don't want to come off as anti-Semitic. I think I made it clear that I used to love Israel, and I still like Israel. There's still a place in my heart for Israel, and there always will be. But you can't sit there and say that we are anointed by God. We are the chosen by God. Therefore, we get to do anything we want. I'm not picking on your faith. If that's what you believe, that's what you believe. But guess what? No one else believes it. And we're not going to sit here and kowtow to your faith if it requires us to allow you to impose tyranny on other human beings. All men are created equal. If you're an American, reread these documents that are the founding documents of our nation, who we are, what we believe. All men are created equal. That means Jews are the equals of Muslims. Not if you talk to the Israelis, the modern day Israelis. Again, I have to differentiate. It was 1995, I think, when Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated, 1995, November. And that Israel was a different Israel than exists today. I traveled to Israel quite a bit, and I went back in 2009. And I have to tell you, the Israel that existed in 2009 was a nation living in fear of the Muslims. They had built a wall, a literal wall, a ghetto wall, keeping the Palestinians out. That didn't exist when I was there before. They built a ghetto wall. It didn't make the Israelis safer. Every Israeli was quivering, shaking in fear of the fact that the world hated them, but they hated them with cause. Netanyahu is the man who killed Yitzhak Rabin. He didn't pull the trigger, but he was the opposition leader, and he was encouraging people to call Yitzhak Rabin a Nazi. He was encouraging these radical Jewish rabbis to put a certain edict. It's like the Jewish equivalent of a fatwa, a religious edict that says this man has betrayed Judaism. He can be killed. And he was killed by a right-wing, rabid Israeli Orthodox Jew who said, the rabbi told me to do it. God told me to do it. What replaced him was Benjamin Netanyahu, who's a lying sack of manure from day one. This is a man. Look, I spent from 1994 to 1998 working with Israeli intelligence about Iraqi weapons of mass destruction. When I started, Iraq was the number one threat to Israel. That's how they assessed it. By the time I finished, Iraq was number 6 and falling. Why? Because Israel had bought into the reality that not only was Iraq disarmed of weapons of mass destruction, and people say, why did you work with Israel, Scott? That's the reason why. You see, by working with Israel, I was able to get them to go, oh, maybe he's disarmed. Bingo, we win. Because if I didn't work with them, they would never believe he's disarmed. And I just told you, the United States will veto everything in the United Nations if Israel disagrees. We were getting Israel on the side of disarmament, and they had bought into it. We also got Israel to, there's another big one, to view Saddam Hussein as a rational actor. You know, they were trying to kill him at the end of the Gulf War. They actually had assassination teams going in there. They did a dress rehearsal for a Sayat Matkal raid. That's their Delta Force. They were going to go in and kill Saddam at a funeral of his uncle. And they were rehearsing it, and had the rehearsal gone well, they would have done it. They would have killed Saddam. The rehearsal went bad. They fired live ammunition when it shouldn't have been. Guys died, got exposed. They canceled it, but now they were going, do we continue to try to kill him? And they called in a team of guys, and they said, let's reevaluate this. And they had a guy assume the role of Saddam and educate himself as if he were Saddam. And then we talked to people, and they came out and they said, Saddam's a rational actor. That if we actually disarm Iraq and then are willing to work with Iraq to build a better Middle East, we'll never be friends with Iraq, but he won't be an existential threat. We can move beyond Iraq with Saddam still at the helm. That's official Israeli policy. Netanyahu came in and flipped the whole script because that was inconvenient. He didn't like that. He's Mr. Security, and to be Mr. Security, you have to have a threat. So he revived the Saddam threat. And Benjamin Netanyahu, for all those people who are resentful about the WMD lies and the blood of American soldiers on the hands of George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, Benjamin Netanyahu's hands are soaked in American blood because he's the guy that got them convinced. He's the guy that went and testified before Congress in 2002, knowing it's a lie. How do you know he knows it's a lie, Scott? Because I worked with Israeli intelligence from 1994 to 1998, and I know that they know what the truth was. But Benjamin Netanyahu testifies before the Congress and says there's absolute certainty they have a bomb, 100%, there's no doubt. And Congress went, yeah, we're going to invade. Boom. They didn't have a bomb. Everything Benjamin Netanyahu said is a lie. Everything he ever says is a lie. He's a liar. He's been lying. Guys, guess who built Hamas? Here's a good one for you. Israel. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu didn't do it because it was Israel backed Hamas back in the 1980s. But when Hamas was going to make that transition to being a terrorist group to being a governing agency, Benjamin Netanyahu is the one who did it. He said, if you want to split up the Palestinians, make sure lots of money gets sent to Hamas. Make sure we get Hamas elected. And they worked, and they got Hamas elected. And then a civil war happened, and Hamas won the civil war in Gaza. They got beat in the West Bank, but now Gaza becomes a Hamas super camp, courtesy of Benjamin Netanyahu. Everything that's happened since then is because of Benjamin Netanyahu. And now he comes back. He's one of the most corrupt people that ever walked the face of the earth. And he's facing corruption charges that would put him in jail for the rest of his life. So what does he do? He gets reelected as prime minister, and then he says, we're going to rewrite basic law. Israel doesn't have a constitution. Can't, because it's a Jewish homeland. And according to the, I could be getting this wrong, but the Torah, or Israel can't exist until the Messiah returns and the temple is rebuilt. So to call yourself the state of Israel today, there's a lot of Orthodox Jews out there saying that's heresy. Can't be a state of Israel. Therefore, there can't be a constitution. But there is basic law. And the basic laws of Israel provide for the same sort of separation of state that exists in the United States. You have the parliament, the Knesset, you have the executive, you have the president's the chief of state, but the prime minister's the most powerful part of the executive. And then you have the judiciary, which is supposed to be separate and independent from there. What Benjamin Netanyahu has done is taken advantage of the majority in the Likud to rewrite basic law so that his party and he personally controls the judiciary, that he can stack the deck with the judges so that he never gets prosecuted. And anybody who says we want to prosecute him, they impeach him. That's the whole thing. So if any judge went, yeah, well, I think I'm going to, all the judges right now, they're going after Donald Trump. Well, it's the prosecutors going to put the overseeing those cases. If this was Israel, they'd all be impeached. Mm-hmm. Ain't that beautiful? Ain't that wonderful? No, it isn't, ladies and gentlemen. It's not wonderful. The judiciary must be separate but equal. That's how it works. Netanyahu's done. Israel went bananas. Hundreds of thousands of people in the streets. Prior to the Hamas action, if you'd Googled Israel, it was all about how the Israeli people were rejecting Netanyahu, saying, you're out. We're done with you. Thousands of reservists said, we will never serve in the military, not under Benjamin Netanyahu. And then October 17th comes. Now, you asked the question, did Netanyahu orchestrate this? Well, we know he orchestrated because he created Hamas. He empowered Hamas. But no, I think what happened on October 17th. Go ahead. You have a question.
Quick question. Maybe you could address also. You've brought up the Hamas, the Israeli creation of Hamas a few times. And maybe you could also, if I don't know the full history, but also am aware that Hamas was utilizing